Alright, welcome to another video review live from the Kentucky Bourbon House with Mr. Colonel Michael Masters. What's your title? You got a full title.
Yeah, it's a trademark actually. It's
Okay.
Colonel Michael Masters, the Kentucky Bourbon Master at the Kentucky Bourbon House in Bardstown, Kentucky.
Wow, that's
a mouthful, but it's it defines me.
I'll work on that and try to get it all down. So we have a really special bottle here. I didn't even know that you had this. One of really the premier bottles of bourbon that there are. It's the Pappy Van Winkle 20 year. So I'm honored just to be here with it. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, the Van Winkles have been making bourbon, as far as I know, since about 1895. Pappy Van Winkle bought the Stitzel-Weller distillery in Louisville, and back in that day he made two brands of bourbon.
Okay.
One was Old Fitzgerald, and the other was Old Weller. Now,
Weller, that's an old brand.
well, it was probably the original wheated bourbon.
Really?
Yes, and he bought the Stitzel-Weller distillery and continued making the wheated bourbon, and then he started producing the Old Fitzgerald. Now, the history may get a little foggy about who started what when, but that's basically it. He started selling. He was a great liquor salesman, great bourbon salesman.
Sure.
And he went into the Stitzel-Weller distillery with two or three other men from Louisville. They provided the money, and he's provided the marketing.
Okay.
And Pappy Van Winkle started selling bourbon. Well, he built the most gorgeous distillery you've ever seen. I worked there for 4 years building whiskey warehouses.
Really?
For Mr. Van Winkle, for his son. I knew Pappy because when he was a very old guy and I was a very young guy, 12, 13 years old, I met Pappy Van Winkle several times. His grandson Julian, who is the master distiller now, it was a friend of mine. We went to a boarding school together, and I was around him some as a younger fellow.
Sure.
And also, Pappy Van Winkle was a big member of the country club we belonged to. Of course, I met him there.
Yeah.
But Pappy Van Winkle always had a great deal of style. A lot of times he'd wear the white suit and the colonel's hat. And
yeah.
he was just a man, just an incredible Southern gentleman.
Sure.
And I knew his son quite well, Mr. Van Winkle, my friend's father. And when I started working out at Stitzel-Weller on the construction crews, we would build those whiskey warehouses. At the end of the day, sometimes we go back into the bottling house and you know, secretly kind of get a sip.
Sure.
So, but it was a lot of fun. And Mr. Van Winkle, after he took over the distillery from his father, started several other brands, and one of the brands was Rebel Yell. Have you seen that brand? Okay. We used to drink in college quite a bit.
Another song.
And yeah, and we also had the Cabin Still, which I have drunk a trainload of. And
define trainload.
A trainload in college. My gosh.
Yeah.
We didn't know when to quit.
Well, this is how you became the bourbon master by sampling it.
Right. Well, we did more than sample. We guzzled back in those days. Now we sample.
Yeah.
But the my friend Julian, in conjunction with his dad, started the Old Rip Van Winkle, which is a 10-year-old. Yes.
Yeah, which we've had before. This is my first review on the site actually with the Rip Van Winkle. So
well, they've got several expressions of that. One's what is this? 90 proof.
Yeah, that's the 10-year. I know. This
is 90 proof, and then they have the 107 proof 10-year-old. So what you have is the Stitzel-Weller Cabin Still, which is probably about 6 years old, 86 proof.
Sure.
Then you have the Old Rip Van Winkle, which is 90 and 107 proof, 10 years old.
Yeah.
Then you have the Van Winkle bourbon, which is Van Winkle 12, that's 12 years old.
Really? I haven't seen that.
Yeah. And then you got the 15, and then you have the Pappy 15. Pappy 15 is 107 proof.
Yeah. We got bottles everywhere. It's hard to see, I know, but that's the Pappy 15. So it actually looks the same as the 20, but the numbers and anything.
Totally different taste.
Oh, it's a different proof too.
Right.
The 15 year is a 107. 20 years at 90.4, which just over the years, of course. Generally speaking, the longer it's aged, the smoother it gets.
Almost invariably.
Almost, okay. Yeah.
The only thing that makes bourbon smooth is is old age and triple distilling, which you're starting to do more of.
Really?
Yeah, I don't particularly favor it, but
what's
Woodford Reserve has been doing a triple distilling operation. Of course, it makes very, very good bourbon.
Yeah.
Sometimes that triple distilling process robs a little corn taste that I favor. But,
the corn's good? Yeah.
yeah, but that's just a matter of taste.
Sure.
But back to our Van Winkle, Pappy Van Winkle 20-year-old. One of the things I want you to look at, Paul, is look at that incredible mahogany color.
It's beautiful.
I think it's got one of the most beautiful colors in the bourbon industry.
You don't see that very often. What's that come from? Is that just an Asian or is it something else?
Well, it's again these guys. About 60 or 70% of the taste of bourbon comes from being in the barrel. So
sure.
how they treat the barrel once the bourbon goes in there, how much they char it, what kind of white oak they use.
Yeah.
I understand that 1,300 kinds of white oak. So there's some manipulation probably can go on there. And then 100% of the color comes from being in the barrel against that charcoal.
Right.
So how they do it, I've never asked Julian. He's certainly my friend. I've never asked him how they do it, but I have asked him one thing. I told him one time, these bottles are very hard to get to. They don't make very much of it.
Yeah.
They're one of the most sought after bourbons in the world.
That's that's why I wanted to do this. You just brought out a bottle this morning. I said we got to videotape this.
Right.
It's a big deal.
And I asked Julian. I told him one time. I said, Julian, I'm having a devil of a time getting your bourbon. My customers just absolutely love it. He said, don't worry about it, Colonel. I can't get any for myself. So I think that's where it lives. It's being distilled now. Julian has developed a joint venture or I don't know what their business agreement is, but their Buffalo Trace is cooking and distilling this bourbon now.
Oh, well, that's right.
But you got to understand that 20 years, it takes forever to get this bourbon.
I was going to ask you, I mean, they wouldn't have any release except for what, every 5 years or so? Or, I mean...
Well, they come out with one distribution on October the 1st every year.
Every year? Yeah.
Now, this year I've not gotten any yet. Hopefully I will. We try to keep a good stock of Old Rip Van Winkle 107 in the house that's 10 years old.
Which is a great bourbon on its own. It's fantastic.
Now, I'll tell you, I favor the 15-year-old 107. I just love it. To me, it's a perfectly balanced bourbon. Now, the real connoisseurs, they'll claim that they like the 20 and the 23 best. They're some of the most celebrated bourbons in the world. This won every taste competition there is to win.
Sure.
In a couple of the competitions, they've got 98 and 99 scores, which is almost impossible.
Wow.
So they're very celebrated, and it's the kind of bourbon that's rare enough and hard to get enough where you don't want to drink it as a cocktail. You want to savor it as an after-dinner drink. I'm not
going to down this. I'm going to drink slow.
Right.
The first one.
Instead of pouring two, I've tasted it many times. I just pour you one.
You got to save as much of that as you can. I understand. So, of course, first we're going to, as always, fill it in the glass. Now,
the whole idea is take your time with it.
Exactly. And in terms of proof, again, it's about 90 proof, which is good. It's not. We did an Angel's Envy before there was 121. It's not going to be like that. It's not trying to be either. But it's still very thick on the glass. Thick legs on there, definitely. So that's a lot. Going to be sweet, going to be high proof. And I tell you, I mentioned to you earlier, the smell of this, I've never smelled a bourbon like this.
Well, it's in terms of Kentucky bourbon, it's a nectar. It's a nectar.
What are some of the, just when you smell this, what kind of comes to mind?
Well, what comes to mind with all the Van Winkle bourbons, and particularly the Pappy Van Winkles, butterscotch.
That's rare.
It's one of the few bourbons I know that you can definitely say that's butterscotch. You get a lot of bourbons that have a caramel, which is burnt brown sugar or burnt white sugar. You get, which is a very pleasant smell. But the butterscotch comes from long, slow cooking, and it really comes about in that bourbon.
It just tastes like candy. I mean, I don't even smell alcohol. It just smells like sweet corn goodness.
You're going to have a good career with bourbon.
I hope so.
As long as you think it's candy, it
goes
down nice.
That could also get you in trouble too, so I gotta try this. It's perfect.
It's perfect.
Wow.
The 23, which I only get when they send it to me, if they do send it to me, I only get 1 or 2 bottles a year.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, with that, okay, on taste, you don't have. It's got like a good bite to it, but it's not too much. Because of the aging, you don't get that punch to the face kind of thing.
The aging takes away the bite.
Yeah. You got a special guest on here.
Hey.
How are you, sir?
How are you?
Hey, Grace.
One moment. It's got a little sweetness, some good dryness to it, but overall, I don't know. That's just delicious.
Well,
it's balanced.
There's for me, and we'll get to the George T. Stagg at some point. But to me, the George T. Stagg at 141 to 148 proof, the Pappy Van Winkle 15, 20, and 23. The Four Roses single barrel, they're just great bourbons.
Yeah.
Just great bourbons.
Well, we need to try them. I'll tell you what.
The Jefferson's Reserve, we'll have to do that sometime.
Sure.
And the Rock Hill Farms. Those are the great bourbons.
But this one, I never had a bourbon like that before.
Right.
Well, it's really, to me, it's kind of universal, actually. I think any bourbon drinker could like that because it's got a little sweetness to it. It's a little dry, but in a good way. It doesn't knock you out, but it's got a little bit of a burn. Like right now, it's real warm, but it's kind of in the middle of everything. It's not, you know.
Well,
I like that.
When you drink the great bourbons, you always want to think of Kentucky. A lot of these bourbon brands are 100, 150 years old. They deserve your respect. The master distillers take these things very seriously. They take a great deal of time to develop the label, to develop the story.
Sure.
And they're just wonderful.
Well, I appreciate you pulling that out. That was definitely a treat. So,
thank you.
We won't have any of that again. I know that's pretty rare, but
that's what you're paying for.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I'll get $250 here soon and buy a bottle. But either way, hope you enjoyed the special edition of our Bourbon Podcast.